Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your lunch and the morning panel. We have one more panel coming in the afternoon, start around 1:30. Right now we have our keynote for lunch, Mr. Sharif Foda. He's the president of the production group at Schlumberger, a position that he assumed in July 2013. Previously, he had various management positions, including president for Schlumberger Europe and Africa, vice president and managing director for Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, vice president for well intervention, Schlumberger career, vice president for well services for Europe, Caspian, and Africa, and geo-marketing manager for Oman. Earlier in his Schlumberger career, Foda held operations management, marketing, and engineering positions in Emirates, Qatar, Yemen, and the Arabian Gulf, the United States, Germany, Eastern Europe. Wow. He began his career with Schlumberger in 1993 in well services operations in the Red Sea in Egypt. Prior to joining Schlumberger, Foda worked in the information technology industry for 2 years. Foda holds a BS in electronics engineering and automatic control for Ain Shams University in Cairo, Egypt. I would like to welcome Sharif, and thank you so much for coming today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very long introduction. So I would like to thank the Becker Institute and Rice University for inviting me to speak to such distinguished guests. Actually, I feel privileged as well to be from the minority men in that room. So basically, my speech will be around 15 to 20 minutes, and I will speak about the oil and gas industry in general, for obviously the subject of women, and the Schlumberger in particular. So first, what is Schlumberger? For those of you who do not know, so basically Mr. Paul Schlumberger, the father of these two guys, Marcel and Conrad, gave them $200,000 back in almost 100 years ago and told them that you have to work on technology to develop something that is innovative to create something in the oil and gas industry. And what they discovered is basically that you can put a cable and go in the subsurface, and with the resistivity, you know where's the oil and gas. Before that, you used to poke a hole everywhere to find out where's the oil and gas. So it was very, very innovative. And at that time, he gave them actually a check of $200,000. That's 100 years ago, which is a lot of money. So, and then they had a value when they had the company, and which is basically the people, the technology, and profits. And why were the people were the main assets? Technology, that you always have to be different from everybody else, and profits to make sure that you are independent. So Shell doesn't buy you, for example. So we kept those values, and we made sure that we developed from there, and I will give you a journey from there. So if you look at what do we do at a glance, so again, Schlumberger is a service company. There is an oil company, and there is a national oil company, which is basically the resource holder in that in a region, right? Like Saudi Aramco, like ADNOC, and UAE. So we go everything from characterization, which is basically you kind of find the oil, and you have a lot of segments to do that, and that's what we call the characterization. And then you drill a well, and there is a whole drilling set of companies that take care of that, to drill the well to be able to access to the reservoir and to the oil. And then you produce it, which is basically what I do. It's you produce this and you sell it. And the key there is you work in different countries. So every country you work in, you will find Schlumberger. And we are approximately in 140 countries, and we have around 100 different nationalities. We make around $50 billion last year before the downturn, so we will not make that this year. And we work with everybody. So that gives us a very good prospect of an understanding of the entire world and how the whole oil and gas industry works. So what's so different then is we looked at this chart here, and I would say 40 years ago, our HR director at the time with the CEO decided that why all the companies in the world have the same nationality at the top level. So if you look at an American company, you'll find that the CEO and all his direct reports are from the US. If it's a French, they're all French. If they are Dutch, they're all Dutch, etc. So he said that the talent exists everywhere in the world. What we have to do is to change that. So, and he took an approach to go to the best university in every country you operate in, and you hire the best people. And then the key becomes that once they go outside their country, you give them the same salary. And this was very, very revolutionary at the time. So if I pick on my country, so if I'm an Egyptian, I work in Egypt and I make an Egyptian salary that is compatible or the best, I would say, in the top 10% of the companies in Egypt, so then you attract the best people. But then once they send me to, let's say, Indonesia, and I become international mobile, I make the same salary like an American that came from MIT that was sent to Indonesia as a field engineer. And I make the same salary of a guy from India that came from IIT. So the difference there becomes that you obviously excel and then become a very diversified company. So if you look at this chart here, this is basically the closed circle is the CEO and his direct reports, where they come from. And after that is the other layer, and after that is the other layer. So this is the top 100, 150 people in the company, where they come from, and you see them from all over the place. And if you understand that Schlumberger is a French company originally, the guy comes from Alsace actually, there is no French or American in the top 5 people in the company, right? So, and that's how diverse the company become. Why am I saying that? Because this is the same analogy we made on gender in 1994. So we took the same stand that we say why we only have 6% of the whole entire company are only on women, and despite the fact that half of the population of the world are women, right? So you should have 50%, especially it's your better half, you should have 50% women in the industry, exactly as we have men. So the way we are tackling this, which I'm going to go through in the next slides, show you how we tackle that and how we make sure that we can retain the talents that we were able to attract. So first we have to attract the female to go to what we call the STEM, right? Which is, I guess, the topic today. So it's very important that we understand that in some countries we have an issue with the university itself, and some countries we don't have an issue, but we have an issue with the industry. So some comes from we don't have talent, we don't have people, we don't have availability, and some you don't have, the job becomes very difficult, for example, if you are in Saudi Arabia, to put female in the field. So first, let's tackle the first issue, which is attracting women to the science, right? So this is called the Faculty of the Future, and it's not particular to Schlumberger. This is basically an initiative of Schlumberger. It's a foundation that we take all the ladies from, I would say, the developing countries, and they don't have the opportunity to go to do the higher education and to top universities. So you can see the universities here, in our faculty. And we sponsor them. We sponsor the professors to go and do post-PhD into those universities, and then they come back inspiring the female to enter the oil and gas. And we have 560 into that program. We spend around $40–50 million on it, and 52 from those are from the MENA region. The second part is the engagement with the university. So as we engage with the university, it's very important to make sure that you recruit, and then you have some kind of follow-up with the university, how we are recruiting. And here I'm talking especially on the MENA region. So we have a lot of work that we do with the Petroleum Institute of, for example, of Abu Dhabi. And we built, 2006, the largest training center in the world in Abu Dhabi. and we built it. It's called MLC, Middle East Learning Center, and there we had the opportunity to get the ladies to look at how the oil field looks like. So they come, they have the opportunity to see the rig, to see the operation, etc., etc. And this is the most important part, to get attracted themselves to enter the industry, right? Because this is, a lot of them have a myth that, you know, this is like almost like a jungle or a horror movie. So then you can see that this is how it works. This is the rig, and they're all engineered. So you can see the pictures there, and this is the graduation from some of them. And they come and they spend a week sometimes with us on it, and then they go to the rig. So I have to be honest, I mean, there is a lot of obstacles after that for the ladies to stay, right? So first of all, there is the obstacles of, for example, when we started in Schlumberger, there was always a problem of the ladies to go on the rig. They didn't allow them, right? So when I was, and some countries actually went backwards, I have to say, right? So in Egypt, for example, when I was field engineer, we used to go to the rig, and the only problem, the ladies cannot go offshore, but they can go on land. So, but some of the land, the company man, for example, did not allow them to operate. So what we did is in Schlumberger, we provided them with their own cabin and restroom. So, because that was the biggest problem. He said they cannot go to the restroom beside the men. So we said, okay, if we give them their own, then they're fine, right? So, and the other part was working in the field. Some of the countries does not allow, they allow women to work, but they are not allow the women from their country to work. And I don't want to single out the countries, but this becomes a huge obstacle, because obviously you have to kind of send only a certain category in certain jobs. So we work with the government. We work with the NOC, and actually Schlumberger usually is kind of unique. They know that we will have always like a voice, because we want to have female working there. So the way we do it is we force recruiting to be 30% female. So at least after a certain time, you will have 10 to 15 years, you will have the same success what I showed you on the national diversity, right? So again, it is not easy to make it, and during the question I'll obviously talk about it, but it is something that you have to, I would say, fight to be able to put ladies in the field, because it's a hassle, and sometimes for some companies, I mean, they will not be able to afford it, because you need to spend more money basically to have the ladies working. The other part, this is another initiative that obviously a lot of ladies can relate to, is we started this in the US, 3 universities, and then it goes all the way now to 45, and basically it's an essay writing competition that they put, and then we take the best 10, and they won an internship into Schlumberger. So the unique part here is actually India adopted that, and it was extremely successful. And you can see how many, 150 female, and we're going to expand it to other countries. Again, this is all the initiative where you get the ladies to kind of like the industry, that come and you can work there, and there is not nightmare. You can have, I mean, for example, it's something maybe funny for some, but it's one of the big obstacles was the coverall. You know, when you work in the field, you wear a coverall, right? Like, you know, so it's a lot, and it was a problem because the ladies did not have ladies coverall. There was only men coverall. They didn't even design ladies coverall. So we went and made sure that, you know, they design ladies coverall in different sizes, and this became was one of the obstacles that attracted them after that they will go to the oil field. So some of the stuff that you think is trivial is not trivial, and once you put an initiative to it, then you see that they will be able to solve these things. So now let's go to the last part, which is after you develop and people are coming and entering the oil and gas industry, how you make sure that you retain them. So retaining is a big issue. And if I look at the retention is usually, or the resignation of ladies are usually double the male, right? And it comes usually at two different stages. So first, when they join, they stay, and after a year they leave. Or if they stay and they pass the field engineering part, which is the hardest part, because that's where the first 3 to 5 years, actually after that they leave. And if I look again in the MENA in specific, honestly, it's mainly due to the social pressure. So it is not due to the workload, it is not due to that the lady does not perform like the man, absolutely not. Actually, most of the time they perform better. The issue is the social pressure becomes horrendous, right? Because when she starts, she's mainly 22, so they're more easy on that. Then we start people get transferred to other countries, then the parent starts where. We are very accommodating. So when for example, when Schlumberger, we started that, and that's all this initiative that you see here. And we had something called Connect Women, which is all the ladies can talk to each other and share the information, share the problems. And they passed so many issues to us. So for example, paternity was a big story, right? And we never thought of that. So we said, why only we give maternity? Why can't the men sit home, take care of the kids, and I work? And we offer this. So today we offer maternity and paternity if we offer dual career. And it was always an issue. For example, in my time when I joined Schlumberger, this was not even an option. You're not even allowed to be married to join the company. So now all the stuff is open, and we accept someone, for example, to say no to a transfer. We accept ladies to say, I can only transfer to these countries. So this is an industry. I'm talking here Schlumberger specific because that's what I'm allowed to talk about. But as an industry, that's a lot of things, and we do this during the forum. They have to do that. They have to open up these barriers or taboos that has no meaning, right? So you have to be accommodating if you will be able to get to these kind of numbers, 20 to 30%. Otherwise, you will always be into the 7, 9%, which is what it is today in MENA. So for example, if I look at us, Schlumberger, which is the highest female content in the industry, we are only at around 10% in MENA, right? Versus we are at 25, 27 in other places. And mainly because of these kind of obstacles, and mainly obviously because as well of some of the countries where they are not allowed to work at all in the field, right? So if you're not allowed to work, then you already exclude a big part of that population. So I talked about a lot of other, all this. So one point I wanted to add is one of the success here. We have in Schlumberger something called every person in the company puts what he wants to do, she wants to do in the future. And usually, when you look at it from gender, you always had the male as management, as the number one, and then engineering, marketing, and sales. You see it here. That's the top self. And then now, and the ladies were always HR, that's the first thing they want to do. And then marketing and maybe management sometimes. And it's changed completely. Now they are the second choice of the top female in the whole company, right? Which tells you that things are changing and things can develop, and you will be able to achieve exactly the same thing you achieved in others. So in Oman, for example, today in the field, one of our segment, wireline, we have 50% female engineers working in the field in Fahoud. And Fahoud is basically a place that is 300 kilometers outside Muscat. So they live in a camp, they sleep in the camp with the men, and they go to the rig site, they perform the job, they come back, and no problem at all. And if I look 20 years ago, if you say, and people think that this is a myth, right? So 50% of the whole engineering team are female. So it is something that can be done. They are not Omanis, they are female engineers. just to summarize, this is the picture of the Middle East. Yeah, this is very important as well, which is what we did this workshop, and we saw that makes a difference, where the ladies can go together and have a workshop and talk about how did they develop, what is the leadership, what's their emotion about it, etc. And you can see here all the ladies that have been developed over the past 15 years. And despite the very high attrition at the beginning, this is ladies that are in charge of a country or a couple of countries. So for example, I can even I know them, a lot of them. This is Shaima, she's Kuwaiti, and she's in charge of a segment of Schlumberger in UAE. And she accepted, again, accommodation. We talked together that she's gonna go leave her, take the kids with her, go from Kuwait to UAE, and she's performing extremely well. If I had sent her to Nigeria, for example, she would have said no, right? So this is what I'm saying, you have to be accommodating because the family will not allow her to go that far. But they would said UAE, okay, right? So, and that's what we have Shajan, she's UAE national, and she's in charge, and she sits in Dubai, etc., etc. So it is a success, and I would say we have to just work hard on it to be able to make it standard in the oil and gas. So in summary, I think we are very committed. We work with a lot of the institution to make sure that they are committed as well. We have to work with the client, and we have to work with the government. So not everybody has the same commitment across the board. Obviously, when we work with major IOC like Shell, Exxon, etc., it's very easy because they have the same objective. And when you work with others, so you just have to be more convincing, let's put it this way. And then the whole industry, if it works, and you'll see that the performance actually of that location is actually better. So because people with the gender diversity and national diversity actually perform much better than just one male. I was just in one function in Saudi Arabia last week, and we were 900 people in the room, and we were 900 men, right? So there is a lot of those functions, etc., that would be different as well with a lot of female in it. So with that, I'll be very happy to take any question. Thank you.
Yeah, I was 20 years with Schlumberger. I would love for you to explain why women.
Why women?
Was it altruistic in any way?
No, sorry, why women, what, sorry?
Why? Because in 1993, women could not connect. That's a fact, we tried. In 1994, it changed. I was there for this, and by the way, I love it. I'm not trying to attack you in any way. No. I'm actually trying to draw something out from you. The why.
No, why
did it happen? Why you start with 15% women, now 30%? What's the reason for it?
Recruiting, you mean? I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Yeah, recruiting, because, as I said, I mean, you cannot, we can put the objective as 50%, and we're not going to achieve nothing, right? So it's an objective to try to go to the closest to it. So if I look at the MENA, for example, we recruited 90, in 2015, we recruited 90 women, which represent around 16% recruiting versus a 28% in North America, 27% in Europe. So you are trying to achieve a number that is, in science and technology, you do not have 50% women. So if I go to the Faculty of Engineering in anywhere, they are mainly men. Even in the US, even in Texas A&M, even in UT, they are not 50%. So we have to have an objective that can be achievable. So our objective was to go from 6% to 25% by 2020. And it's going to be hard to do that, because the rate of attrition of the ladies at that level is double. So for example, if you look today on the downturn, people actually, despite, I'm not talking here, even MENA, are preferring to have male field engineer, because they are easier to move, And in a downturn, they can send them anywhere, right? They don't want to be accommodating. And when you have female, you need to be more accommodating, which I just explained, in MENA especially, region.
So if it's not for business reason, why do it?
It is for business reason because, as I said, it's exactly like the national diversity. In national diversity 40 years ago, people were laughing at us. Why do you need to employ all these people from why do you need all these guys from Egypt, for example? You don't need them, right? So, and we said, we work in a country, you operate from the country, and you have the people from the country that you operate from, right? And the world has 50% women, so you should be, as a company, at least 25% women. And an industry should aim at 50% at a certain moment, right? But engineering, it does not reach that because of the number of faculty.
Well, I just want to end with this comment, and then you surely need to hear someone else. But
sure.
It's one of the things I'm most proud of about Schlumberger. First, the diversity in the 60s, and then making sure that women were hired. And my understanding was that what triggered that were that women were rising in the operating companies that employ Schlumberger services to higher levels than they were in Schlumberger. So it wasn't very much a business reason. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Here I am, over here.
All right. Sorry.
Which country are you experiencing your greatest success in recruitment? And if the country is fine-tuning it too much, then I'll ask for which continent. And if that's fine-tuning it too much, I'll ask for the region of the globe where you're experiencing your greatest success in recruitment.
I would say recruitment of female, I would say. Africa is very good. Obviously Europe and the US and Latin America. So I would say it's quite successful, right? The only obstacle is the countries where you have very small population of ladies into the engineering college. Beside that is the social part that is mainly MENA, has the least success. So I would say we average 26, 27, 28%, 35, 40% in some countries of female recruits. And we achieve around 16, 17% only in MENA region. And from those 16, 17%, I would say 30 to 40% of them leave after year one. So it's a lot of investment because you need to keep doing that, and that's what I was trying to explain. Because people say, okay, I recruit, I train for a year, and then they leave, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I apologize if I missed this, because I know you had commented on it earlier about the attrition rate after 1 year. Did you mention the reason why the attrition rate, or the attrition after the first year? Do you track that?
Yeah, we track this in detail. So what I try to explain is the beginning is the person themselves, right? So the first year is usually, the first 3 years are usually the ladies don't like the work. And that's why I try to explain that we do all these programs with like the ADNOC and IP to Petroleum Institute in Abu Dhabi to explain before. So we do all this 1 week of what is an oil field, etc., etc. So then they are, if they say yes, they will go to the oil field, they are not shocked, right? Because there is always this first, they're still shocked, but much less, right? So they don't find it in Apple, right, or Google, but they are kind of acquainted with the whole thing. And after the 3 years, if they pass the field, which is great, then they are already working. Usually, it's the social part. And I would say marriage is usually the biggest issue, because usually the spouse do not allow her to work with such like a place full of men, right? So, which is the case, because in most of the rigs, the Schlumberger engineer will be the only female on the site. So she's one surrounded by 150 guys on the rig, right? Actually, in Schlumberger, one thing we do now is if we transfer a lady to a location, we make sure that she's not the only one. That's one thing that we change as well. We have 2 or 3 ladies in that location, so she doesn't be the only one in the entire place. Because we know that the surrounding, usually the rig companies, for example, have none almost, and so that's how it works. Very welcome.
Schlumberger has a reputation for close attention to safety and has a very good record. Mm-hmm. Has the increase in the proportion of women in your employ improved the safety record?
Good question. I don't think so. It didn't improve or change. If I look at the statistics on the location on top of my head that are with a lot of female since long time versus the others, no, they are the same, more or less. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
What does the presence of women add to the company? How does it change the company compared to other companies in terms of performance outcomes that you can measure?
Okay, so obviously the number one difference is again the diversity, right? Is the image, the standard, etc., etc. That's one part. The other part is the access to the talents. So when we have half of the population, again female, and you don't have any female in your location, you are missing talents. You are definitely missing a lot of brain power in that organization that does not access. You only access 50% of the population. So we saw that this is very clearly the difference, right? So we saw the performance opposite to my HSE comment, that the location that have female are performing much better. They have much better technical knowledge. They have much better interaction with the customer. They have a much better performance than just the purely male location. And it's a fact. It's not, and as you see, all the ladies are getting very big jobs. It's just because of that.
So, Sharif, I think Schlumberger should be applauded. I think it's a difficult industry to attract women, and oil services is probably one of the most difficult areas. So there's clearly a tone from the top of what you want to achieve, and I think your success in national diversity speaks to your ability to succeed in this area. My question is, what's the hardwiring down lower in the layers of management? Do they have hard targets and held accountable for success in this area, or is it mainly at the senior levels where this gets measured and rewarded?
Very good, yeah. No, it's absolutely right. So the way we work in Schlumberger is actually quite military, right? So we have an objective and we take it from top, and the way to achieve it is we start all the way from the recruiting, and then every manager has to have a target, and we have a target per category. So for example, the general manager of Germany, he will have a target or she, because she's actually a she will have a target of the direct reports, and she'll have a target on the middle management, and she'll have a target on the lower, which is field engineer, etc. And she will have a target to achieve every year based on that. And she's monitored, and actually part of her bonus is paid based on that. So that's how you achieve it. Otherwise, you're absolutely right. It will just die away. Right?
Two questions here.
Yes.
One is Schlumberger has had a lot, like most companies in the oil business, a lot of layoffs.
Yes.
And I'm curious about how they do their layoffs when it comes to gender aspects. Is that under consideration? Secondly, you have a merger with Cameron. And when you merge your employees, I'm sure Cameron has very different policies than Schlumberger. I'm curious how those policies will be integrated into gender assessments with Schlumberger.
Very good. So for the first question, yes, it's taken into consideration. Most men don't like it, let's put it this way, because it's discriminating against them, basically. So we look into making sure it's per performance. So the way it works, it's you rank the performance, but usually we rank the performance overall, and then we rank the performance on gender. Right? So we need to make sure that not all of a sudden the location becomes all male for after a second, right? So yes, it is taken into consideration. The second one, they apply our policy. That's the simple answer. So when we did the Smith, for example, we looked at their statistics. They were half, basically, of their female content than ours. So we told them you have to come to our standard, right? So that's how we do it. So we need to make sure, so the objective becomes copied. Obviously, we give them the milestone becomes longer because it has to be achievable, right? But they will have a harder target, basically, than what they have. Or if they didn't have one, they will have one.
Yes, hello. Yes, very interesting talk. I'm wondering, I believe you mentioned that you had tended to have greater success in African regions. Yeah. Well, first of all, where exactly are you in Africa? And secondly, what, in your opinion, accounts for the greater success in African regions?
So we are everywhere. Every single country you can think of, there is Schlumberger. There is not a single country there is oil and gas, there is no Schlumberger, because we discovered them all, right? We are not being... So in Africa, they actually have a very good gender in the institute, right? And Africa is one of those regions where the ladies have very good success, and they actually work in even specialist operation where it's hard to find than others. So for example, you don't find technician in the Middle East, lady. Very, very, very rare. But you don't find that in Africa. Africa, for example, you go to Nigeria, we have mechanics, we have technician, we have every level, we have female. And it's very acceptable. It's actually very acceptable. They don't feel the same like in MENA region, for example, right? So, yeah, and even MENA region, I'm saying MENA region, but MENA region is separate, is different, right? I mean, if you work in Algeria, it's different than working in Saudi, or working different in Yemen, or it's not the same. So, and Algeria, for example, as well, is very accommodating. And Algeria is another country where we had success we have technician female. And that's a much harder job, because then you do not go back to the office. You stay in the field all the time, and they do. Yeah.
My question was a bit related to this. Being an engineer in MENA, I'm very much interested to know why the ratio is very low in the Middle East and North Africa and female recruits. Is it, do they apply a lot but do not make the cut, or is there a lack of interest in applying to this field anyway? Trying to see if there is a lack in skills-based or a lack of interest.
No, it's a lack of, mainly lack of interest. So the way you do the 25% is basically the recruiter, when he goes, for example, to university, let's say in AUC, and he or she will get, we tell him you can recruit 10, he will recruit at a minimum 3 female. You're not allowed not to work. So if you don't find 3 you're not going to hire a male, right? So they find. The problem is they leave. so quickly, right? So that's why but the recruiting numbers, for example, if you look at MENA, if you look at in a place like some of the countries are excluded completely from it, right? And that's why the whole number is lower. So for example, then we go to, and I'm going to be a bit more specific, we go to Egypt, for example, we tell them I need 40% from Egypt, I need 40 or 50% from Lebanon, and I will accept 10% from UAE or from Saudi, or etc. The other initiative we do is we look a lot from MENA national studying abroad, and that's a key, right? Because that's easier. So actually we look in the US, for example, we have a program in the United States where we attract all the ladies that are in the oil and gas or in the petroleum engineering or engineering in general, and we try to recruit them because we know that they will stay in the oil and gas industry because they are already studying abroad. So the culture that they are already letting them to study abroad, then they will be able to work. And it's actually getting a lot of success, especially that they can work the first year in the US without work permit. So because they studied there and we give them a job there, and they get the training much easier because the training is the problem when they go back home.
Thank you.
I just wanted to underscore what you said about the success of male and female roles in oil and gas in Africa. And since you mentioned Nigeria, which is my home country, I'll use this as an example as far as the success rate there. It is a philosophy thing, a life philosophy. Before oil and gas, palm oil was the national the gross national product, and we have a proverb that dictates that men and women work cooperatively, and it says that if the palm kernel brings forth oil and the palm frond brings forth oil, the more oil there'll be in the pot. And since now crude oil is in question, that same philosophy would work in those spheres as well as other sectors of industry.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
My name is Syed Hashimi. I am a member of a think tank from India Energy Forum. My question to you is, the Indian oil and gas industry, what is its contribution to the female STEM? And if you have some kind of either market research done on that, and because of the abundant human capital there, especially the women folks, what would be your strategy to recruit from India worldwide?
So we have the same, I would say, approach to all the countries similarly. So we are recruiting a lot from India. We have manufacturing in India, and it's actually very successful so far. And we have, similar to the comment I made on Africa, we have a very success ratio on the female. We have the vice president of Australia, she is from India. We have 4 presidents in the Schlumberger portfolio from India. Our CTO is from India. So definitely you're very well represented, right, in the company. It's extremely well represented.
We'll be taking one final question.
That's a lot of pressure. My question is about recruits and the industry that they're coming from. When you are talking about recruiting females, are they mostly coming directly out of university, or do you find women changing fields, and how does that compare versus your male recruits?
No, we always go for a fresh graduate. So the company culture since the 100 years is always recruit from university, fresh. They go through the same program, and then they all compete on level ground. So the same level field, so everybody's the same. And the entire company started as a field engineer and then took management role, etc., etc. We find that this is much easier for the culture of the company. The people are very similar. They know, they went through the same thing. Obviously, we do some middle, especially on petroleum engineering, some expertise, but that's the rare, not the norm. And the male and female is exactly the same. Actually, I would say it's more even that most of the female are from homegrown, put it this way, because actually there are not many available. So usually most of the companies steal from us, right? Because we have more than the others, right? So we try to keep the most out of them. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.